So our next speaker, I thought, had one of the coolest names in Bitcoin when I first started getting into it. Right, Ryan X. Charles, as I was saying, with his cool hat, his cigar, and his cool name. It was really exciting when he was hired by Reddit to, what was it, create their own cryptocurrency. And then it was kind of a sad time when they decided not to do that. But I've always been interested in what Ryan has to say, and he's our next speaker with probably talking about yours.
Hello. So I'll finish that story a little bit and provide some context. So I think it's not on my slides, and I realized as I was putting this together, gosh, my name isn't even on my slide. So I'll give a little bit of that sort of story. So my background is I was getting a PhD in physics. I discovered Bitcoin in early 2011, became very interested in it. Bitcoin became a hobby of mine. In early 2013, I decided, you know what, this space is really going somewhere. This thing is for real. So I decided to leave my PhD and go full-time Bitcoin. So I've done a bunch of things since then. I'm most well known, sadly, for having worked at Reddit. It's sad just because the project didn't work out. But I have the coolest title ever at that company, which was cryptocurrency engineer. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only person to actually hold that title at like a mainstream company, certainly a social media company. So what I'm doing now is I'm working on a company called Yours. There are only two of us at the company. It's myself, my co-founder, whose name is Clemens. So I'll just sort of dive into it and explain what this is. Next. All right. All right, so we see this problem on the internet, which is people that create content. These are things like videos on YouTube, could be articles, could be GIFs, could be anything. These are content creators. Many of them have the problem that, well, they're not earning anything. And of the people that are earning money, they're not earning very much. So this is their problem. It's the how can I earn money for creating content on the internet? And one of our users, Chaz Carlson, he's been in our community for a while. He's been very, he's a good advocate. So he volunteered to be my example user on my slides. Thank you, Chaz. The complementary problem here is more the consumer side, which is, why is there so much clickbait, fake news, and trolling on the internet? Or to put it differently, why is the quality of the content on the internet generally quite low? Or I'll put it yet another way, how come there's some really, really good content on the internet, but it seems like most of the stuff I see isn't the good stuff, it's the kind of crappy stuff? So this is a problem of, of curation and getting the high quality stuff. How do you find that? How do you get that to the consumer? So these are just a few headlines I gathered recently that seem to hint that there's something wrong here with the way that content monetization on the internet works. YouTube people are having problems on YouTube with, their ads being turned off and things of that sort. It's somewhat well known that newspapers have struggled really throughout the whole history of the internet to monetize on the internet. So there's something wrong with ads and subscriptions and things of that sort. So I like to put together this sort of matrix here of what are your options to monetize content on the internet. So the most popular option that works very well for Google and Facebook is ads. Subscriptions are another quite popular model, which are, you sign up for, a monthly subscription with a newspaper or with Netflix or something like that. There's something missing here. So what is missing? Well, I think the missing piece is micropayments. I think this is, for some reason, micropayments haven't really taken off in the world of internet content. But actually, micropayments, if you think about it, are really the most obvious way to monetize something on the internet. Like, if you go back to when the internet or when the web specifically was invented in the early 1990s, there's this great error code. I think it's 402, which is payment required. So this is somewhat well known in the Bitcoin community because we're like, hey, that's perfect for Bitcoin. Why don't you make a web page where it says error or payment required, and then you pay in Bitcoin to receive the web page? So this idea that payment should be on the web goes all the way back to the beginning. But I don't know. We live in a world dominated by ads and subscriptions instead of micropayments. All right. So what I'm going to describe now is I'm going to go through and describe our what we call our payment models. These are ways that we have figured out how to monetize content on the internet. Well, let me sort of explain it. Let me give a little bit more context here. I didn't really have a slide on this, but so yours is a social media platform. The idea is that we're trying to, anybody can sign up. So an important difference between what we're doing and say what, there's a website called Blindle. Is anybody here familiar with Blindle? Okay, so Blindle is not really a social app. There's a missing piece here for a social app to apply options like this. So, okay, anyway. The purchase model, this is our MVP. If you go to our website right now, yours.org, we have this on. So the purchase model works like this. You have some type of preview content that the author creates. They're writing an article, for instance. You can, again, check out the examples on our homepage right now created by our users. And then you just have a button, and the author decides where inside my content do I want to put this button to pay 10 cents for something. And then the user clicks 10 cents, they buy it, they can see the full version of the content. Again, this is kind of the most obvious way to monetize something, right? Like if you were to put yourselves in the shoes of a content creator, what is the obvious way to earn money? It would be like, well, I just sell what I'm doing, right? I would just sell the content to people. And I'll get to later why we think why that hasn't happened until recently. But anyway, this is our basic model. Here's just some screenshots of it working on the actual app. So our app is live right now. It is fully functional with micropayments and all that stuff. And this particular piece of content had to do with Bitcoin, so I figured it was an appropriate thing here to show as an example. But this is what it looks like when you buy a piece of content on yours. Now, people will say things to us like, okay, so I use Reddit, and I wouldn't be interested in buying most of the content that I see on Reddit, okay? Well, we have a bunch of other models that we're exploring to find ways to get people paid. So if you're not the type of person that would be interested in buying content on the internet, although I would argue you would, because the content will be worth paying for on yours. But we have all these other methods, okay? So the purchase model is just the simplest model, but there are so many other things you can do once you've got micropayments inside of a social app. We're really trying to explore all these alternatives. So another example I like to give is comments. So wouldn't it be cool if when you write an article or you make a video or something like that, the people that want to comment on your article pay you? You decide how much they have to pay. So it could be something like, could be really small, it could be 1 cent, could be 10 cents or something like that. But wouldn't it be interesting if, especially in light of, this happens a lot in the Bitcoin community, we see a lot of trolling, right? You see a lot of comments, you see like, it could be the case that 90% of the comments on a particular thread or whatever would be just trolls. So imagine the trolls have to actually pay you to be able to troll your post. We have a bunch of other models that are sort of along this line. So wouldn't it be cool if, imagine you have people paying to post a comment, okay? So cool new monetization mechanism for the author. If they generate discussion, they get paid. What if you could like tip a comment to bump it up on the page? So when you see the comments on the thread, you're like, yes, I want to upvote that comment. But upvoting isn't free, it costs money. So you can pay to bump somebody else's comment up on the page. So we call that sort of the auction model of the more you pay, basically you bid up the comments on the page. So those are just some clever ideas that we've come up with over time about how to do monetization with comments. So the theme of this that I'll keep coming back to is, wouldn't it be really cool if you just had micropayments in a social app? Just look at all the different things you could do. So another idea we have is something we call the affiliate model. This is, people ask us, how are you going to grow your platform? What are you going to do? How are you going to get new users? I call this our virality option. When everything works well, and again, we have an alpha, we have a number of bugs though, so we're in sort of soft launch mode. We're being a little bit quiet about it for now, so we have time to fix all the problems, both with the way micropayments work and the way the UI and whatnot works. But when we're ready to grow, we can allow our users to become an affiliate. So wouldn't it be cool if, somebody creates a piece of content and you have either a friend or you have a different following or something like that where you know that these other people would be willing to pay for this content. So you can be an affiliate. If you've purchased the content, you get an affiliate link, and you can then share that affiliate link with other people, and you get 10% of the money. Now, the incentives of this system are pretty good. You have to buy the content first, so it's not like you're going to spam everything. You're only going to be able to be an affiliate for content that you yourself have actually purchased first. And furthermore, the people that you give the link to, you don't get any money unless they actually buy it. So it's not like you're just getting a bunch of people to click on it or something. They actually have to follow through, sign up if they aren't already, deposit money, and purchase it, and so on. So the incentives are pretty good with the affiliate model. This is also an example of something we call a curation model. We're interested in getting people paid not just for creating content, but also for curating content. So this is an example of curation. So we have a bunch of other examples. I'm only going to give you 2 more for the sake of keeping it sort of simple and short. But of course, if you have micropayments, you can also do ads. Now, we're not planning on doing ads anytime soon, but I think it's a really interesting thought experiment about how ads could work differently if you had micropayments built in. The way ads should work is, well, if you're the one looking at the ad, shouldn't you be the one being paid? Why is Facebook and Google getting all the money for your attention when you look at an ad, right? Isn't that odd? Like, how come everybody else is earning the money? You're the one giving up your time and attention to look at the ad. So what if people could target you directly? And if you actually look at the ad, you're the one who gets paid. So you sort of opt into this advertising situation. You can see a little earn 10 cents to view this ad button. If you don't click it, you don't see the ad. You never have to see the ads. You'll see these little buttons. But if you do want to look at the ad, you get paid 10 cents immediately. Your time and attention, you get rewarded for your time and attention by being paid yourself. So if we ever do ads, and I'm not saying we will soon, but I think it's a really good thought experiment of how better this could be. If we do ads, this is how we're going to do it. Another good thought experiment is that we can also do subscriptions. There are a number of different ways you could imagine this working. So first of all, there's nothing stopping us from doing subscriptions the way it would normally work with a newspaper. Maybe you pay $25 a month or something like that. But micropayments make new things possible. So wouldn't it be cool if you could subscribe to something on like a daily basis, and when you want to cancel, you cancel. It's a much smaller amount of money per day. What if it weren't per day? What if it were per minute or per second, right? You can stream content, for instance. That's like a subscription on a really, really tiny time scale. You're paying every single second for a video or whatever it is that you're consuming. So we can also do subscriptions, but we can do so in a more powerful way than is currently possible. So I like to draw this chart. So this is a different way. So earlier I said that micropayments were the third monetization option. Actually, micropayments are like the best monetization option that captures everything. Because if you can do micropayments, you can do ads, you can do subscriptions, and you can do all these other things that have never even been done before, right? Like our simple product of just having a paywall, it's so simple, but most people cannot think of an actual social paywall where you can just write an article and publish it and charge 10 cents for it. As far as we're aware, we actually have the only working version of something like that ever. Like you can just buy a single article for 10 cents, and it's a real micropayment, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, so we consider micropayments to be this sort of all-powerful thing that once you got this working, the sky's the limit. So you can start looking at what would the size of this be. I mean, imagine you've got a social platform with built-in micropayments. Like the potential is pretty extraordinary. I mean, you can do all these other things that all the other people are doing, and you can do all these new things that weren't possible before. The market size for this is extremely high. In fact, let me give a sort of a vision for this. I think we're entering a world where people are using 3D printers to print things, and I think that's going to become much more common. I think what's really happening here is we're entering a world where the information economy is displacing and replacing the physical economy. The information economy is going to be the entire economy. So content for micropayments is basically just a market of information, right? The potential size and utility of this, it could be everything. It could be the way that you do your job in the future is you have an app on your phone, or maybe it's your VR helmet or something of the sort, and information is being exchanged for money. So we think this is the future, and micropayments allow us to do all these other things. All right, so why micropayments now? Like, if micropayments have been talked about going all the way back to the 1990s, how many people, I mean, I'm sure, I can't even ask because, you know, you've all heard of micropayments before, and yet maybe you've never used them. You've used Bitcoin. I would argue that Bitcoin itself isn't designed for micropayments. That's a different question. We can ask Craig that, I guess. You need a little bit more than just Bitcoin. You need payment channels, which I'll get to in a second. But why not just have a database? Like, why isn't it, like, why can't you do micropayments on PayPal? So one of the questions that we get all the time is, why don't you guys use PayPal or Stripe? Well, you know, PayPal charges 30 cents per transaction. Why in the world does PayPal charge 30 cents per transaction if all they're doing is updating the database? How does that cost 30 cents? Like, how come no one has outcompeted PayPal at just like, why don't we just drop it to 25? Well, we don't really know, but we can only theorize that, well, PayPal has got to spend a lot of money on complying with regulations in the U.S. and, you know, throughout the world. They're headquartered in the U.S., and I'm U.S. I always accidentally mix up. I'm not in the U.S. today. But anyway, in Europe and all the other places. But anyway, we think it's legal. It's really difficult to comply. And so this actually raises their cost of transactions. That's why it's 30 cents. It's really difficult for them to comply with the law. All right, so that's why now. So let me explain our technology. So of course, it's a Bitcoin conference. I don't barely even mention the word Bitcoin throughout this talk. So why am I here? What am I talking about? What does it have anything to do with Bitcoin? Well, all of our technology is based on Bitcoin, or at least it was. Again, I'll get to that in a minute. So we thought to ourselves, well, first of all, I've been in Bitcoin, as I said earlier, for quite some time. So I often give the pitch slightly in a sort of reverse order. For me, it was more like actually thinking about this, and I say this to you guys, I wouldn't say this to a different audience, but what is the killer app for Bitcoin? How do we make Bitcoin reach a mainstream audience? What do we have to do to actually get Bitcoin in the hands of all those normal people out there? Well, I think something like this is the killer app for Bitcoin. All right, this is how you take this fancy technology that's got libertarian ideals that not everyone agrees with, but they'll love it when they use it. How do you wrap it in something that's a consumer-friendly, something accessible to a mainstream audience? I think this is it. I think this is the perfect thing. This is how we reach normal people. This could be bigger than Facebook. In fact, let me give you that argument. I mean, just consider for a minute how large Facebook is right now. Facebook doesn't have a monetization, or at least not a good one for their users. You don't earn anything for the stuff you put on Facebook. You're giving all that money to Facebook. It's your time and attention, you looking at Facebook. You're the one looking at the ads. You're the one making all the content. Why is Facebook earning all the money? I mean, imagine you had something like Facebook, but with built-in micropayments. When you click a button, you're making a payment to your friend or whatever. This could be so much bigger than Facebook. As soon as this exists in like a refined quality form, which is what we're working on, we got an MVP, but we have a ways to go to make it genuinely reach that audience. This is absolutely a bigger idea than Facebook, so I think this is how we reach a mainstream audience with Bitcoin. So anyway, so how did we build our technology? Well, so my co-founder and I started about, we had a bunch of open source software. It's a long story, but we joined forces about something like 14 or 15 months ago. And the price of Bitcoin the price of a Bitcoin transaction at the time was 5 cents, which we thought, gosh, 5 cents is kind of high. We read the the Lightning Network white paper and things of that sort, and we're like, okay, you know what we really need to do is we need to build one of those L2s. Let's build a layer on top of Bitcoin that allows most transactions to be off-chain while also being trustless. So we built what's often called a trustless payment channel hub, or what we just call it the Oracle. And so we have a protocol based on payment channels. It's based on many of the same ideas as Lightning, except we don't use SegWit. We made what I think was a pretty wise decision early on that we didn't know whether SegWit was going to happen or not. So let's just forget about SegWit. Let's just make it work on Bitcoin as it is today. So as far as I'm aware, we actually have the only working routed micropayments on Bitcoin today. We broadcast an actual routed micropayment, routed through payment channels. I don't think the Lightning people have done this. because I don't think they really have their routing stuff working yet. So we were able to beat them to the punch. Again, as far as I'm aware, if there happens to be a Lightning person, feel free to disagree if I'm missing something. But we did announce this and everything. We have an actual routed micropayment. You can look up the transactions on the blockchain and all that with Bitcoin today. So anyway, Trustless Payment Channel Hub. That's why I'm here. That's why it's Bitcoin, even though I don't need to mention Bitcoin, when I give this pitch to like a sort of mainstream audience. All right, but let me talk about economics for a moment. And so I figured one of the things I wanted to do with my talk was convey to this audience what I consider to be an absolutely urgent need for on-chain scaling. And I feel like as a business, we're uniquely qualified to say this because we developed a trustless layer 2 for Bitcoin. Okay, so we actually went way, way, way out of our way to develop this thing that everybody's talking about, which is a trustless layer 2 on Bitcoin. Nonetheless, we are absolutely 100% behind on-chain scaling for Bitcoin. So I'm going to run, over with you guys why that is. Why an L2 doesn't simply solve the problem by itself. So let's go back to early 2016 when my co-founder and I started working together, and we're like, Bitcoin fees are about 5 cents. So let's think about the economics of payment channels. And by the way, I have an entire extensive article going over this in crazy detail. If you want to look at that article, it's called The Economics of Payment Channels. All right, let's suppose you fund your wallet, and okay, so let's suppose you fund your wallet. You have to, the way this works, you do actually have to like fund a payment channel. So let's suppose you fund it with 10 euros. And again, we're assuming 5-cent transaction fees. Now, there are a number of different transactions you have to create to open a payment channel. I'm ignoring the very first one, which is simply sending a transaction to the wallet that can do payment channels. The payment channel technology itself requires these 3: funding transaction, commitment transaction, a spending transaction. Spending is how you withdraw. The funding is how you get it in there. The commitment transaction is the channel itself. So that's about 15 cents total fees. I make an assumption, which is that the payments are predominantly one way across this channel, which we believe is going to be true for most payment channels anytime soon. You're pretty much either going to be a creator, in which case you're receiving it, or to phrase it differently, you're a merchant. You're someone who's being paid, or you're someone who's paying. You're a consumer. You're someone going to the store and buying something on our app. You're someone that's going around clicking on content, making payments. So we think the channels are going to be predominantly one way. So that means the fees are just like the amount that you fund it with, which you then use, and then like the total fees divided by that. So that ends up being about 1.5% in this case. Okay, and then I'm going to show you a chart that I look at on a daily basis, and I was incredibly stressed out in early 2017 watching the fee situation get completely out of hand. Over the past year and a half, fees increased from 5 cents to 2.25 euros. So that's over a 50x increase. I mean, it's a completely ridiculous level of increase. It's more than the price. I mean, the price increased a lot. The price increased, what, it increased like 10x from the bottom. The fees increased a lot more. I mean, the fees are completely out of hand. So this chart should absolutely terrify, and I'm sure it does in this audience, many of the people here, about what does this mean for Bitcoin. This is kind of a problem. I mean, 2.25 euros. I mean, as people joke around here, but you go around, there are all these merchants here in this city. I mean, like, I guess I'm going to go around for fun and spend Bitcoin here later. But I got to say, it doesn't really make economic sense, does it? I mean, why would I spend Bitcoin at these merchants if each transaction cost me 2 euros just to make the transaction? I mean, that's really expensive. All right, so let's think about the economics of payment channels today on Bitcoin. We're not going to make the completely incorrect and faulty assumption that fees are only 5 cents. We're going to look at what it is today, which is 2.25 euros for a transaction. There are a bunch of subtleties here I'm not going to explain. It's actually more than that because the transactions tend to be bigger. This is just the average. So, all right, funding amount 10 euros. Well, so you got 3 transactions to open the channel. So that means by the time you've got the channel open and ultimately you're going to spend it, you're talking a 77% fee for a 10 euro channel. A 77% fee, that's like PayPal is 2.9% plus 30 cents or something like that, right? A 77% fee is completely ludicrous, uncompetitive with anything I've ever heard of, right? Like, it's out of the question. Now, what this means is you can't fund a channel with 10 euros is what this means. The only way you can fund a channel on Bitcoin today, you got to use way more than 10 euros. I mean, you got to use like 100 euros or 200 euros, something like that, so that at the end of the day, your payment channels are not being completely eaten by fees, okay? So that's the workaround, all right? You can still use payment channels on Bitcoin today, but you can't use it with a small amount of money. You still got to use really large amounts of money, things that are absolutely not micro. There's nothing micro about, you know, using a 100 or 200 euro channel. So think about this from our point of view. Now, are we going to ask our users, you got to deposit 200 euros to, let's just drop it back and make it like we'll swallow some of the fees. What would be the absolute lowest you could swallow? Like 50 euros? Because that would still be really high fees. So let's just say 50 euros. Even on the extreme low end, accepting very high fees so that you can buy a 10-cent article. I mean, you know, that doesn't really work for micropayments. If the onboarding cost is that much higher, that's unworkable. I mean, you know, that doesn't work. All right, so as I said earlier, I've been in the Bitcoin community since 2011. I've met many people in the space throughout all this time. Man, I am as pro-Bitcoin as I think somebody could possibly be. I was a Bitcoin maximalist in every conceivable way up through 2016. The fee situation, however, I simply had no choice but to go back and revisit all these assumptions I've been making this whole time, right? So, all right, so I wrote 2 articles in 2016 called Why We're Sticking with Bitcoin. It's kind of funny. I'm running out of time, but I'm just keep telling my stories here. So in early 2016, Ethereum was taking off. I mean, it's taking off again now, but it was also taking off in early 2016. People are like, why don't you use Ethereum? Like, well, I'll tell you why, because Bitcoin is awesome, and you can do everything with Bitcoin. You don't need Ethereum. Why would I use Ethereum? Bitcoin has a much bigger community. Look at all these merchants that accept it. Look at all the exchanges and all that stuff. We're not going to switch to Ethereum. We're sticking with Bitcoin, all right? All right, so then more stuff happened. We had a competitor came along, and it was called Steam. And people are like, look at Steam, you know, why are you guys using Bitcoin, which is having all these scaling problems? Why don't you just make your own cryptocurrency like Steam? Like, we're not going to do that. Let me tell you why we're not making our own cryptocurrency. We're sticking with Bitcoin because Bitcoin's awesome, and it's got all these merchants that accept Bitcoin. It's got all these exchanges that let you trade in and out of Bitcoin and so on. We're not going to use our own blockchain. We're sticking with Bitcoin. So I wrote a second article with an almost equivalent title about why we're sticking with Bitcoin. And these are the actual links here. But then, you know, fast forward more, my co-founder and I are building this technology. We got like actual micropayments working. We got it working. This is awesome. We announced everything like, wow, we actually have a real routed micropayment on Bitcoin. But now fees are like over 2 euros. And we're running the numbers going like, does our business even make sense anymore? Because can we seriously ask our users to deposit like 100 euros into the platform? What about the fact that we got bugs and probably a lot of them are going to lose their 100 euros due to a bug? Are we going to be liable and like have to pay everybody back all this money or something? I mean, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. So we started looking around. It's like, well, you know, we could just switch to Litecoin because Litecoin is almost exactly the same technically as Bitcoin. It's got check sequence verify. We looked at a few others. We looked at Zcash, for instance, but Zcash doesn't have check sequence verify, which we use extensively in our payment channel technology. So Zcash wasn't an option. We couldn't use Dogecoin for the same answer. Yes, we did consider Dogecoin and take it seriously. We can't use it for technical reasons. Litecoin was the only, I mean, it's basically the biggest one that had check sequence verify. It's a real community. I like Charles Lee. I think he's a cool guy. So why don't we just use Litecoin? So after maximal, you know, Bitcoin maximalism, after all this time, we didn't have a choice, okay? On Litecoin, we can open a €1 payment channel. You can deposit only €1. It costs like 5 cents or something to deposit your €1. If you lose your €1, which you will right now because we've got a lot of bugs, it's not a huge deal because it's only €1. We're gonna fix those bugs, and you can put more on it later. But anyway, so I wrote a new article called Why We're Switching to Litecoin. It's interesting that this is now my most popular article of all time. This was more popular than all the other articles I wrote about why we're sticking with Bitcoin and why Bitcoin is awesome and all that stuff. For some reason, switching to Litecoin really engaged people, and this is by far my most popular article of all time now. All right, so what would it take for us to switch back to Bitcoin? We're running out of time, Rob. If you want to kick me off at some point, I will finish this slide and we can sort of take questions. I don't know where he is, but oh, there you are. But
we ran late. We'll split it up between you and the next.
okay, so what would it take for us to switch back to Bitcoin? We would like to use Bitcoin for all the reasons I was saying before. I mean, there are more merchants that accept Bitcoin. There are more exchanges. There's more liquidity. It's the biggest, okay? We would prefer to use Bitcoin. So what would it take for us to switch back? Well, I think on-chain fees should be about 5 cents or lower. I mean, it just doesn't make economic sense now for us to switch back to Bitcoin unless fees are significantly lower. I mean, why would we do that? I mean, like, yes, there are fewer merchants that accept Litecoin, but there's not literally zero. Yes, there are fewer exchanges for Litecoin, but actually many of them, because of this problem with Bitcoin, they're all adding altcoins. So like the entire altcoin ecosystem is growing dramatically because of Bitcoin's inability to scale. So it's got to be low. I mean, you got to be competitive. I mean, that's the answer. You can't be way, 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 way higher than the altcoins or we're not going to switch back. So you got to actually be competitive with the other altcoins, okay? All right, so you can run numbers on this. So one of the my favorite computation on this is something I ran years ago, because I'm like, I wonder how many users Bitcoin can actually support. So I ran numbers on this. I posted this to the Bitcoin mailing list. I never got any interest from the core developers, okay? This is just completely ignored, even though I keep making the same argument over and over and over again. It's ignored within the core developers, not outside of that, okay? But anyway, I mean, 7 transactions. All right, so that's kind of an optimistic maximum for what Bitcoin can do right now. Do you know how long it would take? I mean, I put the figure on there, but it's interesting to do it as an experiment yourself. How long would it take to send 7 billion people, or you could use Craig's 5 billion people, which I think is slightly better, because it's true that 7 billion includes the children, but let's just keep it at 7 billion, because that's the number that I ran earlier, so including all the 3-year-olds in the world. So how long would it take to send a transaction to all 7 billion people in the world? 1 on-chain transaction per person. It takes 30 years just to send each person a single transaction. So imagine trying to use Lightning Network, which I don't mean to diss. I think Lightning Network is awesome. But Lightning Network does not solve the problem. Not if it takes 3 transactions to get into Lightning. You're never going to reach anywhere near the entire world, leaving blocks at 1 megabyte. So there are 2 different arguments here. One is the economic one. You got to lower the fees. But you can also just run through the numbers and think, look, 1 megabyte gets you nowhere near global adoption. So I think, look, if Bitcoin doesn't do this, one of the other altcoins will. Ethereum is uncapped. Yes, people are complaining about scaling on Ethereum, but guess what? That's an engineering problem, and they're probably going to fix it. So Ethereum, with an uncapped block size, actually can scale right now to the entire world. Yes, again, yeah, they're going to have problems, but they'll fix them, and there's no fundamental issue there. All right. All right. So do not think, do we increase the block size? That is the wrong way to think about that. The right way to think about it is, how do we increase the block size dramatically? How do we increase the block size sufficiently large to actually be able to service the entire planet? Because again, if it's not going to happen with Bitcoin, it's going to happen with one of the others. So, you know, is Bitcoin going to be the winner, the dominant cryptocurrency, the one with the biggest market cap, the one that people actually accept at their stores, or is it going to be, the first one, the MySpace of cryptocurrency, right? I think that would be pretty sad, and there's no reason why that has to happen. Okay. And read my article. I have another article there, 10 gigabyte blocks. So I've been talking about this for a long time. I have actually been talking about this for a long time. So this was in the back of my mind as we're building all of our technology and whatnot. At the end of the day, the reason why we switched was fees. But anyone with any sense knew this was coming this whole time. Okay. So anyway, in conclusion, look, we're building a market of information. I think it's a much needed thing. We're going to solve this problem of getting people paid and improving the quality of content on the internet, which I think is the killer app for Bitcoin or whatever coin we have to use. We've got 2 innovations. We have product and technology. We had to switch to Litecoin because of the fee situation. I mean, we waited basically as long as we could, but we at the end of the day had no choice. We need on-chain scaling. We're currently in soft launch. We're alpha. You can use the app right now. It will probably work, but also there's probably going to be bugs. So if you put money on there, we recommend like making a payment and taking money back off again so that you don't lose your money. We're going to fix all that stuff, and we'll tell you not to just remove your money again when we're ready. So the website is yours.org. That is the end of the presentation. I have a bunch of frequently asked questions, which I'll just skip due to time constraints. And I don't know whether we want to take questions or I can also skip and not take questions depending on Rob's assessment here.
Does anyone have some questions? Sure. Okay. Here, well, I'll start with you, Close. Let's just take a couple because we are running a little behind. Ready?
Hey, I listened to your podcast last night and I really like your ideas. I just had one question. What if somebody forks your software and they sell the articles and everything for half the price, for example?
Okay, well, on forking the software, so we actually aren't open source, first of all. So with respect to forking the software, currently that wouldn't be possible. But they could do other things, like rather they're not forking the software, they're just literally forking the people's articles. Right now, don't tell anybody this. Well, I'm giving you. The articles are actually like free. If you look at any article, the paid piece of content is actually like in memory on your computer right now. We're not doing a very good job with the security of that. It would be possible to like clone the website. Our stance with respect to any of those types of issues are literally just pragmatic. You know, what do we realistically need to do? So when that becomes a problem, somebody starts copying content, we'll do what we can to stop them from doing that, and we'll take practical measures to prevent that. So we take copyright seriously, and we want our users copyright protected. They own the content. So we will do what we can to protect that.
Heads up.
Thanks for the conch. I really liked your way of looking at content and who's responsible for paying. Thinking about your let me see this ad and pay 10 cents, and you're looking at Facebook and saying, look, these things are the wrong way around. I got to thinking that actually what they're doing is what Facebook is doing is providing a network, and so they do provide value, but they're using a artificial scarcity model in order to sell more advertising. But in the case with, say, a network like Facebook having advertising that you click on to see the content, is it possible to, which is a model you didn't display there, have the affiliate be Facebook and me being the person who places the ad and gets the content?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. I think anybody could be the affiliate. So I gave a simplistic example of like it's an individual person or whatever sharing the content. We take all these, like I think it's a business question exactly what types of those features and how we go about doing that. I mean, absolutely, Facebook could be an affiliate. I mean, we're trying to just make it happen. So we have all these ideas about these alternative payment models besides just purchasing content. So we're going to basically implement them and go about doing things like community growth and business development exactly as we see fit for growing the community and the business. So that's an option, is how I would say that. Yeah.
Just a quick question. When you lose coins that are sitting in your channel, where do they go? And are you looking for investment funding?
Yeah, so all the payments are peer-to-peer, so the private keys live in the web browser. And I totally skipped everything technical, but if we ever write white papers on this, we've got like 3 white papers because we have the economics of the product itself involving purchasing, affiliate, and all that stuff, which is kind of interesting, and we have a lot more than I showed here. We also have the protocol of micropayments. Ours is similar to Lightning, but it's not the same, so we have our own unique protocol. In order to make this possible, we have the most complex JavaScript application you could possibly imagine using really advanced features, including something called service workers and push notifications, which only exists in Chrome and Firefox right now. We'll have to worry about getting on Safari and iPhone and whatnot later. But everything lives client-side. When you lose your money, the reason why you lose your money, it's not because we lost it. It's because there's a bug in the software that's running on your computer. And those keys are still there, but you lost access to it because there's a bug. So the money lives in your web browser, all right? It's all client-side, and the payments are peer-to-peer. We did that, and we went way, way, way out of our way to do that because we're not a money transmitter. We're a software business. And let me finish the investment question. We are not currently taking investment, but give me your card, and we can talk about that.